A few months ago, we made a video about the best-selling rackets. Now it's time to talk about the best-selling tennis shoes. Hey everybody, it's Luca from Rackets Runners. Now obviously we do a lot of racket content on this channel and you seem to like it, but let me know what you think of me talking more about shoes, strings, and maybe some other stuff as well. Obviously rackets are my passion, but really I like talking about anything tennis related, and I'm pretty excited to do this because there are some good shoes on this list. Well, obviously there are good shoes. These are the best sellers. I would hope they're good. Before we go on though, remember that any of the shoes we talk about here you can check out on our website, racketsandrunners.ca. And please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know down in the comment section what you want me to cover next. So best-selling tennis shoes, it's pretty self-explanatory, although there's one big caveat. Of course, we have to carry these shoes at the store. We can't really sell a shoe we don't carry, so there's going to be some notable absentees here, but in general, we carry most brands. Before we get into specific shoes though, let's talk about some of the themes we saw when making this top 5, because there are some pretty interesting things that help make a shoe popular. One of the big ones is that pretty much all these shoes are super easy to slip into and feel super comfortable right away. Initial step-in comfort is super important because that's the first point of contact between consumer and product, so it's kind of like making a good first impression, and those last. There are a lot of really cool technologically advanced shoes out there that might technically perform better, but because they're a little bit more quirky out of the box, the general consumer won't like them as much. That was a pretty interesting takeaway for me, and another big similarity with most of these shoes is that they come from a line that's been successful for many years. New lines, new tech, new anything is cool, but the best way to gain a loyal following is by developing a sort of safety blanket product where you know what you're going to get from one to the next. Take me for example. I love trying new gear and I get to test pretty much every shoe out there, but at this point I'm kind of always going back to my Vapor Pro 2 because I've gotten so used to it over the past 8 months and it's my safety blanket. Enough chit chat though, I'm really excited to talk about these. I haven't done a shoe review in a while, so this will be fun. Let's get into number 5. I think this one's going to surprise a lot of people. It did me. So coming in at number 5, we have the K-Swiss Hypercourt Express 2. Like seriously, this shoe came out ahead in front of the likes of Solution Speeds, Vapors, and a bunch of other shoes that I thought would be more popular. But you know what? After thinking about it, it makes complete sense. This is just a classic tennis shoe in almost every sense of the word, except for the fact that step-in comfort is fantastic. We'll talk more about comfort here in a second, but classic tennis shoes were not always known for their comfort. But yeah, even just looking at the silhouette of this shoe, it screams traditional. It's a little higher cut in the heel, it has a pretty tall and roomy upper, a classic poofy tongue, and then that wider in the toe box, slightly narrower but not too tight cut in the heel. It's a fit that so many tennis shoes have had in the past, and despite the trend towards lighter, lower volume, and sleeker shoes, people want what they know, and as soon as they step into the Hypercourt, it feels like home. On court, it's basically the same experience. There's really no tech here that makes the shoe bouncier or push off more efficiently, but it's just got classic stability that you get from this shape, and that's something I really enjoy. The comfort is what really stands out though. Zero pressure points whatsoever, partially because it is a little bit roomier, but also because it's engineered to be soft where it needs to be. The tongue is super poofy. That's my absolute favorite thing about a shoe because it means you can crank on the laces without worrying about lace bite, and the heel cup is well padded without being too soft where you lose heel lock. Overall, it's just such an easy shoe to wear, and it's quite durable with this full rubber wrap. There's nothing crazy going on here, but like I mentioned earlier, you don't really need that to sell well. It also doesn't hurt that it's one of the least expensive shoes on our wall, coming in at $155. Canadian dollars, by the way. All right, coming in at number 4, we have my personal favorite shoe of the year, the Nike Vapor Pro 2, and I wasn't lying when I said the Hypercourt came in front of Vapors, but I was talking about the Vapor 11. So that means for the second year in a row, the Pro, or I guess you could call it the budget Vapor, is selling much better than its more expensive sibling. Yes, the price does play a role, but it's not just that. The Vapor Pro 2 is a fantastic shoe in its own right. We did a comparison between the 11 and the 2 earlier this year, so go check that out for a little more in-depth information, but I personally prefer the 2, and I understand why a lot of people feel the same way. I don't know if I'd say this is the most comfortable shoe from Nike right now, but it's up there with the GP Turbo and the Zoom Court NXT, and if we're talking about combining comfort with support, this one kind of blows those two out of the water. It fits like a glove out of the box, and you've somehow got zero pressure points, but also this feeling of the upper cocooning your foot down into the shoe for extra support. The best part of the fit, though, has to be the heel. It's cut a little bit higher, which I like, but what really sets it apart is the foam inserts inside of it. They're firm, so they lock your heel in extremely well, but they're foam, so there's really no uncomfortable pressure whatsoever. In terms of how it moves on court, it is a pretty firm outsole, although it is noticeably softer than the rock hard one on the Vapor 11. There is a zoom unit in the forefoot, which you do feel adds a little bit of bounce, but it is quite rigid overall, which I know a lot of people will like, but some won't like quite as much. Personally, I prefer a rigid outsole because it makes me feel very grounded and reactive, and because generally harder outsoles are better for sliding, and this is one of the best shoes for sliding this year. Then you've got the heel to toe drop, which is slanted downward, so it puts you nicely on your toes. It's actually very similar to the one on the Hypercourt Express. One thing to note is that the Vapor Pro 2 is probably the snuggest shoe on this list. You do feel the upper compressing down on your foot a little bit, which I like because it makes me feel very supportive, but if you do have very wide feet, or if you don't like that feeling, you might want to look at something else. Poofy tongue too, so. Coming in at number 3, we have a shoe that may surprise some of you, but for us at Rackets and Runners, we're almost surprised it's not higher. It's the New Balance 806. Honestly, this is probably the best-selling product in Rackets and Runners history, partially because it's been around for so long, but also because it works so well for so many people. Obviously, it's not really like any of the others on this list, but it's also not trying to be. This shoe is made for players who've been using it and loving it for decades, and for players who could benefit from its unique characteristics. The 806's upper is made from a natural leather material, so even if it's not perfect right out of the box, it will be after break-in. It will fit better than basically anything else out there because leather has the unique characteristic of molding perfectly to different feet. It also comes in different widths, and it's that adaptability that has made it perfect for so many players that have something weird going on with their feet, so maybe bunions, bone spurs, or just bizarrely shaped feet. In terms of durability, it's also quite good. The leather is very robust and doesn't really require much maintenance, and then the outsole is super thick and rock solid. The fit overall is pretty roomy. Heel lock is good, but nothing exceptional, and you're definitely not going to be blown away by any of its modern movement characteristics when you're on the court, but support and stability are top tier, so this shoe is not going anywhere anytime soon. I don't think it's leaving the top 5. Okay, so we've made our way to the top 2 here, and what's interesting is that 1 and 2 are pretty different, so they're not really competing with each other. But coming in at number 2, we have the New Balance 996 V5. The 996 is fascinating because it's always been that comfortable, natural fitting shoe, and the previous ones were great at that, but they weren't really burly enough for super aggressive movers. They were selling really well though, so I didn't think New Balance would ever change things up, but they did, and they sacrificed absolutely nothing to get there. The 996 V5 bulked up massively. This shoe is so much more substantial than any of its predecessors. They beefed up the heel area big time, they made the knitted upper material much more dense, and they stiffened up the sole as well. The end product is a shoe that's still extremely comfortable, probably the most comfortable on the market right now, but also one that can handle big changes of direction, lateral cuts, and pretty much anything else aggressive movers want to throw at it. I still wish New Balance would develop a slightly better outsole for sliding because these are really sticky, but that'll come one day. In terms of the natural comfort style of shoe, this is the cream of the crop right now, and the sales numbers don't lie. If that's what you want, then the 996 is perfect. One little thing to note is that the V5 for some reason got a lot wider, so don't go for a 2E unless you have exceptionally wide feet. I actually went down a half size because I was kind of in between a 9.5 and a 9, and the width felt better on the 9. So food for thought, but let's move on to number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to make a best-selling product, it's really quite simple. Just follow what Asics has done with the gel resolution. It's actually really not that simple because it involves years of dedication, but basically, this is the perfect shoe. There's really no other way to put it, and it's by far the best seller of the year. Why is it the perfect shoe? Well, step and comfort is phenomenal, check. The line has been around forever, check. And on top of all that, it's basically a modern technological marvel. So somehow Asics has created a safety blanket shoe with a super modern and techie shoe, and here's what you can expect in terms of fit and feel on court. If you've used it before, then it's much of the same, but for those of you who haven't, the gel res has that classic Asics cut where it's a little bit narrower in the toe box and then keeps a similar width through the midfoot and heel. It is also cut a little bit lower in the heel, but it still has plenty of room and width if you need a heel cup or an orthotic or anything like that. The heel to toe drop is much flatter than on something like the Vapor. Side by side, it almost makes it feel like the gel res is putting you on your heels a little bit, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but I'm not going to argue with this formula because it's clearly working. But anyways, what do I mean by technological marvel? Well, basically every extra feature on this shoe serves some sort of purpose and does it very well. The Dynawall sidewall adds a bit of oomph to your lateral movement. The Flight Foam midsole is cushioned but still super responsive, and this outsole is the best for sliding, period. On top of all that, the gel res is basically bulletproof, maybe a little less than in recent years, but it's also gotten substantially lighter, so that's a small price to pay. I have to say, I love Asics because brands like Nike and Adidas think it's like cool or quirky or something to drastically overhaul their most popular shoes every few years. We've seen it with the Barricade and Vapors recently, but Asics does not follow that motto. They make a new gel res every couple of years. It's that much better than the last one, and it just keeps gaining popularity and selling. This shoe's not going anywhere anytime soon, and I can confidently say that the 10 will be better than the 9. Maybe not by much, but they'll find some way to improve it because they always do. Kudos to you, Asics. Also, side note, I'm very excited to try the new Solution Speed, which should be coming pretty soon because that shoe was 6th or 7th on our list, and I wouldn't be surprised if the new one cracks the top 5 next year. That's going to be it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And remember, we've got some awesome shoe fitters in store, so please don't hesitate to come visit us, or you can check out all these shoes online at racketsandrunners.ca.